Well, hello everyone. I hope you're having an amazing time at home. Today we're going to learn to do the ANOVA in Excel. The one-way ANOVA is a test statistic that compares the means of two or more groups. And actually it should be three groups because that's what we use the ANOVA for, is three groups. And so it compares the means of three groups on participants that vary on a single independent variable. So what this means is when we did the t-test, we looked at the difference in mean scores for two groups or two categories of our sample population. Now we're just going to take it and we're going to break it down into three groups and essentially do the same thing but use the ANOVA. The one-way ANOVA requires a single dependent variable, and for our class example or our practice example, it's going to be leadership scores, and a single independent variable, and for our class example, it's going to be job title, and we're going to look at three specific job titles. And which group participants belong to is determined by the value of their independent variable. So groups should be independent of each other. So when we do ours, we're going to look at administrators, social workers, and clerks. Those three groups are independent of each other. You can't be a social worker and a clerk or a social worker and an administrator. So you can only be a social worker, administrator, or a clerk. So our three groups are independent of each other. And then we're going to administer them a leadership test, which is the dependent variable, and determine how they rate based on their role at the agency, which is the independent variable. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to create a worksheet and title it Class Activity Number 5, ANOVA. On that worksheet, I want you to copy your original base client caseload, the original one you had that you've done nothing to. Go back to that original one, copy it, and put it on this sheet that says Class Activity Number 5. Once you've done that, I want you to come over here and I want you to copy the first four columns: client name, age, marital status, and job title. So highlight that, come down below it, skip a few rows, and paste that there. Whoops, sorry about that. Didn't mean to have that. That was the last thing I pasted. So these four rows, I'm going to copy them, come down here, skip a few rows, and then I'm going to paste them. This is all I'm interested in working with for the ANOVA, specifically the job title. But once you have done this and you have this here, I want you to come back and I want you to put these in alphabetical order. Put the names in alphabetical order. And remember, to do that, we're going to sort. So we're going to go to our data. We're going to go sort A to Z. We're going to expand that selection because we want everything to sort together. And then we come up and so it should look like this. You should have A car, A health, A north, B Sam's. So these are in alphabetical order based on that first initial. All right. And we're actually only concerned with two categories, but it's easiest just to have copied all four of these. So we're only concerned with these categories. We're not concerned with the work-life score for this particular exercise. So now that you have this, I'm going to want you to enter the leadership scores right here next to job title. These can be found on the handout, instructions for how to do this exercise. Actually, and I want to make one correction for your labeling down here. We're going to make this number 6, not number 5, to go with everything else. So I apologize for that. I'm going to rename mine as number 6 so it will be accurate. So rename yours to class activity number 6. There's just a skill that you need to learn of how to rename a tab at the bottom. Excuse me. So now you're going to put the leadership scores in here, and they're listed there on your sheet, on your handout. So just do that. I'm going to actually go over here and capture them because I had them on my other one. So I'm just going to copy and paste them and move them over for time's sake. So now this is what it should look like. You should have your names, and then you're going to have your leadership scores in this order. And this is what we're concerned with, is we're concerned with the job titles and the leadership score. So now, once you've administered your leadership test, when you did that, in there you would have captured what they were, if they were administrator, social worker, clerk, or whatever. Because to compute the ANOVA and the columns, we're going to have to set those so that they're sequentially. So now that we have this set up, we have our names, we have our leadership scores, we're going to go back and we're going to sort one more time. We're going to sort according to our job categories. So let's just sort from A to Z for the job categories, expand the selection so everything goes. So now we have administrators at top, caseworkers, clerks, cooks, drivers, house parents, social workers. And we're concerned with administrators, social workers, and clerks. To compute the ANOVA, they're going to have to be sequentially in columns together. So we're going to extract those out and create our own columns. So let's just come over here and let's say administrators, and let's say social workers, and let's say clerks. And you can format these so you can see everything. So administrators, I just want to capture the administrator scores right here. So I'm going to capture those scores. I'm going to copy and paste them right there. Now I want social workers. So I'm going to come down here. Where are my social workers? I'm going to just capture the social workers score. I'm going to copy and paste those. Then I want my clerks scores. And there's my clerks. So I'm going to copy and paste those. So now I have my administrators' leadership scores, my social workers' leadership scores, and my clerks' leadership scores. I always want to compute descriptive statistics. I want to have an understanding of the overall leadership characteristics for the entire group, and I want to have descriptive statistics for each one of these, because these are things I'm going to need to report when I need to report my findings. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do administrators, social workers, and clerks, the descriptive statistics, my data analysis. These are interval ratio level scores, the leadership scores are, so I can use this one. My input range is going to be for administrators. I included the label. My output range, I'm just going to pop it right here below. And I want summary statistics. So there's administrators. Now let's do the others. Descriptive statistics, my input range is going to be social workers. My labels are there. My output range is going to be right here. I got my social workers, and now let's do the clerks. So my descriptive statistics, my input range, labels, summary statistics, my output range. Okay, and then there's my clerks. So I'm just going to go back and just clean up all of these and make my number with my 2 decimals. There we go. So now I have administrators' descriptive statistics for their leadership scores. I have social work descriptive statistics for leadership scores. I have clerks' descriptive statistics for leadership scores. I have a mean of 77.4 for administrators and the standard deviation of 14.6 and a range from 56 to 91 and a total of 7. Those are the important things I'm going to want to pull out of these descriptive statistics. total of 7 there. And I have a range, minimum and maximum of 77 to 99. I've got the mean right here. I've got the standard deviation. I've got my minimum, my maximum, and then I've got the total number here. So now I know the descriptive statistics of leadership scores for each of my categories that I'm comparing. And I'll be able to report that later. And in looking at this, social workers have the highest leadership scores. Of course, we would. We have the lowest standard deviation, so that means we have the lowest variance, which means ours are tighter. We have more consistency in our mean among our group than the others do. So we have 77.4. We have the lowest leadership scores for administrators. I think that's probably true sometimes. And clerks have a pretty high leadership score, which is amazing. And if any of you know, when we rely on our clerks or administrative assistants, they do need great leadership skills. So these numbers, even though they're arbitrary, are not going to be too far out. So now we want to determine if there's significant difference in these. Did these just happen by chance, or is there a meaning behind social workers having higher leadership scores as compared to the others? So we need to compute the ANOVA to determine that. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go to our data and go to our data analysis, and we're going to find the ANOVA single factor, because we're just looking on leadership scores, just the single factor. So the ANOVA single factor is the one you're going to be using here. So we're going to click on the ANOVA single factor, and we want our input range. And our input range is by columns, okay? So when we do our input range, we're going to want to capture all 3 of these all together. This is why they have to be consecutive and one right next to the other, is we have to capture them all together. We included our labels in the first row, okay? Now we need our output option. Now this produces several tables, so just come down here where there won't be anything, and you'll have plenty of room for it to be, and then hit OK. And it's going to come out and it's going to look like this. So this is your ANOVA single factor. Okay, you have your administrators, your social workers, and your clerks. It's got their average right here. So if we actually switch that to our number with just 2 decimals, see, it's got what we have here. But you see, when you get this here, you don't get your standard deviation and you don't get your range, which is important in your reporting. So that's why you need to do descriptive statistics and then come and do this. But we have the same averages here that they have there, okay? Now this is the table that we're interested in right here, is this ANOVA table. We have our degrees of freedom, and we've learned we have to report our degrees of freedom when we report our findings. Right here, I'm going to open this up so that you can see, here's our p-value, which remember we always set our alpha, our anticipated, or our threshold at 0.05. Well, we have a p-value of 0.2. So what does it tell us? That tells us that there is not a significant difference. And then we have our F statistic, which is what we report, which is similar to what our T statistic is. And we're actually just going to report 2 decimal places. Okay, so we have a p-value of 0.24. We have our F statistic of 1.56. We have our degrees of freedom. We have our means. We have everything we need to make sense of our leadership scores among administrators, social workers, and clerks, and everything we need to do our reporting. And we know there is not a significant difference. These scores just more likely happen by chance. There's nothing out there to say why social workers would have stronger leadership scores compared to administrators or compared to clerks. There's something just kind of fluky out there because we do not have a significant difference. If this had been 0.05 or less, then we could say, yes, there's a reason why social workers have higher leadership scores, and we could go back and do some research and determine why. But we don't. We do not have a significant finding here. So how do we write this up? I'm going to go back, and I'm going to, because this page I've already done it, So I'm going to copy it and bring it over so I can show you how to write the findings. Okay, so drawing conclusions for ANOVA requires that we indicate the F value, like I said, 2 degrees of freedom. Right here we have these degrees of freedom because we have the 3 groups, okay, and the significance level, which is right here. So reporting the results above that are not significant, we would write the leadership scores for those employed as administrators, social workers, and clerks were compared using a one-way ANOVA. No significant difference was found. We in our parentheses we put our F, and then we have parentheses inside that. We put 2, 20. Or actually, that should be 2, 19. Let me switch that. For our degrees of freedom, okay, 2 and 19. And then we have equals 1.65. I don't know why I got different numbers here. Oh, I must have left somebody out. This would be 1.56. And it's greater than 0.05. So this is what I came up with. It's very possible I left somebody out. So if you come up with different numbers, you still report them the same way, okay? But this is the steps that you take to report the ANOVA, or calculate the ANOVA and to report the ANOVA, all right? So we're looking at administrators, social workers, and clerks on leadership scores. There's our descriptive statistics that we would write in our paragraph to come back and report what the means were. And then there is our conclusion based on the ANOVA. Now, when you write your results, you include this statement right here, the leadership scores for those employed as administrators, social workers, and clerks were compared using a one-way ANOVA. You include that statement, but you also want to go back and describe how many, 7 administrators, 7 social workers, 7 clerks, what their mean scores were individually, what the standard deviations are, and what the minimum and maximum is. Just like we've described on others, you're going to want to describe that here. So when I post this example up for you to look at as you're doing your homework, I'm going to put on there how you would actually write out the whole thing. But this is how you write out the one sentence for reporting the values of your ANOVA. Not a lot of different from t-test. We're just looking at significant differences in mean scores between 3 groups instead of 2 groups when we use the ANOVA. So that is how you do it. I will post the example, my worksheet up there so you can see how it's done, and an example of how to write the results. Then for your homework activity, you're going to compute the ANOVA for some other scores that you've already done on your client-based caseload. So you'll be doing the same thing. You can follow this example to do your homework activity. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. You can shoot me an email or you can put them in the discussion section in D2L and I will respond to those. Pretty straightforward, not a lot different from the t-test. Shouldn't take you long to do it and you'll be able to move on to the next one. So you guys have a great rest of the week and I will be talking to you later.